This episode is brought to you in part by Canderel. Coming soon, a luxury master-planned condominium community rising at the corner of Bathurst and St. Clair. Situated directly on the subway and streetcar line, a monument of architecture and interior design, a timeless expression of glamour and grace. Forêt Forest Hill. Register today at live@forêt.ca. That's live@FORET.ca.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Menschwarmers, your bi-weekly look at the world of Jews and sports. I should say this edition is coming tri-weekly. We just had to push a week, try to get some things down, but I'm here with my friend and co-host Gabe. Gabe, how you doing, buddy?
I'm good. I'm quite sick. I've got
I think we're both a little congested.
I've got the daycare-itis these days. My son is now
too.
in his third week of daycare, which means that this is just how I'm going to be for the next, 3 years until school, till the immune systems build up.
Well, you and I both had babies since the pandemic for the first time, and it's like our kids and ourselves are just like not exposed to germs at all compared to like other parents typically during the first year. So like when my daughter first started going to daycare, it was just we were all sick for the several months.
We've decided to start feeding our child extra dirt to get that immune system just run up and running real quick.
Sure.
But
just like an extra spoonful, sprinkle it in
exactly.
With every meal. Like Metamucil.
Some germs in his Metamucil, exactly. In his Cheerios. But other than that, doing great. Came back. I was away last week on taking part in the traditional Jewish activity of sport fishing, which I'll discuss later at length in the podcast. I was in the beautiful isthmus nation of Panama. Found a Jewish guy.
One of the few isthmus nations.
Yeah, one of the few isthmus nations. Isthmus. I don't know how to pronounce it, but isthmus. Yeah. It is one of the few isthmus nations.
Yeah. Well, we have a great show today, and we are very lucky to be joined by Howard Megdal, writer and founder of the 9 newsletter and Next Hoops. He's a writer who's been writing about baseball and other sports online for years, including the Baseball Prospectus. And he recently released or re-released
the second edition.
His book, the second edition of the Baseball Talmud, which is his definitive ranking of every Jewish baseball player in history. And I would say it's a great read. It's a better reference. Like, it's a good thing to have around just to know, who were these guys, where do they sort of rank, and somebody's, someone who's, Howard's really done the research on them to sort of see where they should rank in terms of their careers.
In his track dates. In the track dates, I hold the book in front of me now. One thing I really like about it, and I'm sure this is intentional, although I didn't get the chance to ask Howard about it, is that the book sort of has this like baseball dust sheen on it, which makes it look like you're picking up this like old tome that you can blow off of to get the dust out, to get the Rabbi Akiva's view on Alex Bregman as you open this. Or I guess Howard would be the Rabbi Akiva of baseball. But it's got this heft to it. It's a nice book.
It does, and I would say it's the kind of book that would make a great bar mitzvah gift. Maybe throw in a few 20s in the inside cover, but I'm sure that the previous edition and this one as well will grace many a bar mitzvah boy's room afterwards. Just it's like the classic atlas of Jewish
sporting legends. Would you like some light reading? It's a heavier reading of the Jewish sporting legends, and all in baseball.
But it's great. Howard was a great guest, and we're really lucky to be joined by him. So that interview is coming up towards the end of the episode. Before we get to that, just a few sports, Jews and sports news to talk about. First one, Gabe, I want to talk about your namesake and another member of the San Francisco Giants. Two Giants related stories this week.
There's a lot of Gabe solidarity here, in all things. You have to support another Gabe.
I agree. There's enough Jameses that I don't have to support them, but anyone who shares my last name, I unequivocally support. But San Francisco Giants manager Gabe Kapler was in the news recently because he posted a blog post saying that he would no longer be standing for the national anthem in response to the lack of momentum on getting anything done on gun control in the United States. So he wrote a blog post about that, and talked about honoring those who have served the country, but his right to protest as well. He did very quickly go back on it, we should say, because Monday was Memorial Day, and he also wrote about how he thought it was necessary to show his support on Memorial Day, and he did come out for the anthem that day. But a controversial move, perhaps less controversial than when it's done by black NFL players. Certainly we saw the effect it had on Colin Kaepernick's career. Some people came out in support of Kapler. I think I saw Tony La Russa said it wasn't his place to do that. So, the typical sort of mixed opinions you'd get, but, a real impressive sort of show of leadership from, one of baseball's prominent Jewish managers.
Absolutely. And, if you look into Gabe Kapler's sort of history through his career, he's been sort of notably as an outspoken and fairly liberal guy. There's a study from, I think it's the 2003 Red Sox, where they say that he was the only registered Democrat on the entire team.
Wow.
And so he's stuck to his, I don't want to say stuck to his guns because that's a bad use of that, analogy, but he's stuck to his convictions for a long time. And he's certainly trying to make himself heard now. As well, he's, a great manager and a really interesting guy, a thoughtful guy, and a guy who really cares about both Judaism and social justice and he's a guy who has never again tattooed on his body, and I think he looks to expend that philosophy to where he sees, injustice in America today.
Yeah, he said he'll take it day by day, and I can understand that this is sort of an emotional reaction, but it is just interesting to see a prominently outspoken coach or manager in this context. You don't typically see coaches doing this sort of thing. The exception recently being Steve Kerr, who had a very impassioned speech before the Warriors game 5, I think, or game 6. But
absolutely.
Anyways, just something to keep an eye on, and something to continue watching. I think Kapler's established himself now as one of the best managers in the game. He won Manager of the Year last year in his first year with the Giants. Second year with the Giants after the COVID year. But he's someone who will continue to have a role and continue to be outspoken as a manager, as a baseball player, and as a Jewish athlete.
Comparing Kerr and Kapler for a second there, it reminds me something a lot of what Jeff Pearlman said on our show, maybe I guess it was a month ago, 2 months ago when we had him on, when he mentioned, in his experience covering a lot of sports, baseball tends to be the least open to diversity of thought. Basketball tends to be the most, and Steve Kerr was sort of righteously, I think rightfully applauded for his comments. He's been outspoken before about the Trump presidency and about some of things he sees wrong with America. And Gabe Kapler, I think it might be a slightly bigger deal if you take Perlman at his word that it's less expected in baseball. And I'm proud as a Jewish person that there's something breaking that hegemony of a outspoken Jewish coach. Whether or not one might agree with what he's saying, if baseball is such a strict place where behavior is so, there's a lot of unwritten rules in how you behave, I'm happy to see someone breaking them.
Definitely. So we should move from Gabe Kapler, who I should mention in Howard's book ranks as the 6th greatest Jewish center fielder of all time, to the 3rd greatest Jewish center fielder of all time, and that is Joc Pederson, who is on the San Francisco Giants, who was recently embroiled in, I don't know, the weirdest player.
Is it real? Is it a real thing? Was he making it up?
Okay, so let's go through the background of it, because I think this story deserves some scrutiny, examination. I think it's pretty amazing, and people probably
a little kibitz here. We'll kibitz on it.
Right. So the Giants were playing the Cincinnati Reds the other day. Tommy Pham, who plays for the Reds, and Joc Pederson were, it seemed like, chatting before the game. And in a very blurry video that eventually came out, what you can see is that Pham slapped Pederson, sort of over the head pretty violently. And this was reported on. Pham was suspended for 3 days. And we got the story after the game about what exactly it was. And Joc Pederson explained to reporters that what happened was that there was a disagreement in their fantasy football league that led to the altercation. It was later explained that part of what the cause of that was that Joc Pederson sent a meme to the group chat for the fantasy football league that was insulting to the San Diego Padres, the team that Pham was on previously, and that really and Pham ended up leaving the league. And there was some money at stake or something like that. But the initial disagreement was just sort of about the rules of fantasy football, which I think is really funny because that's just like stars. They're just like us. Like they also have dumb disagreements about fantasy football with their friends and league mates, just like us.
It was meme related. They're just like us.
Yeah, exactly. And then Pham sort of having a outsized reaction to a meme about like it was a meme of like 3 weightlifters and the third weightlifter fails, and it was like that was labeled as the Padres, is like very, very petty and ridiculous. But so all of that to say, like, is a very funny beef and like very bizarre reason for it. But I think the thing that's really caught a lot of people's eye about this, or like why it's been so interesting, is that like Joc Pederson's explanation of what happened on multiple occasions now has just been like, I think like deadpan performance art. It's just been like an unbelievable recitation of facts with like minimal editorializing, because I think the facts support that, Pham had a ridiculous and unnecessary reaction to what was, a minor joke in a group thread. Like he kept it real in a way that, went wrong here.
Should that story be true? He could also, which I think might be even funnier, if he could just be making it up. Like having this deadpan performance art of a out of nowhere story to explain an incident on the field.
No, I don't think so, because he had the receipts. Like he has
the meme.
Yeah, he has the meme. Like he has said all this. Pham hasn't come out and said that's not true. He said like that he's a big dog in Vegas and that there was money on the line that was being messed with. So I don't think that this is untrue. It's just been sort of like revelatory and rare that you see an athlete, I don't know, sort of break the omerta here and just be like, this is what happened, this is why we're fighting, and like there's no
it's drama in the group chat.
Yeah, but it's like there's no subterfuge in the way Pederson's explaining it. It's just like this is what happened and this is why he's having a reaction, and I think sort of explaining why Pham's deserved to be suspended, or why his slapping him was so uncalled for, just based on the facts that are there. So it's impressive to see the level of candor that's been associated with it. I do think it's deadpan, and like Pederson has a big personality and has done these sorts of things before, most notably when he wore a pearl necklace all of the end of last season and the playoffs into the World Series, and referred to himself as being a bad bitch. Like
that necklace is, if it's not in the Baseball Hall of Fame, should be in the Jewish Sports Hall of Fame.
I believe it is in the Hall of Fame.
Good to know. And also important to mention that Joc Pederson is from Northern California, so now maybe he can be a little bit more of himself now that he's playing at home. Recent inductee into the California Jewish Sports Hall of Fame. I think he's in both the Northern and Southern California Jewish Sports Halls of Fame from his time on both growing up there and then on the Dodgers. But it's lovely to see him sort of embrace his personality a little bit more.
Yeah, this is great. It was great. Like, again, it's a silly story, but it's pretty amazing, and I think has won over more fans to Joc Pederson. I think even casual observers of baseball or NL West baseball are have adopted him, or lots of people have adopted him as a fan favorite, even if they're not a fan of his specific team. So I don't know. We'll cover any future developments on the story. This is probably the end of it. I don't know if the Reds and Giants play each other again in the near future. I guess they probably have another series coming at some point, but just a bizarre.
Maybe we'll get new memes out of it. A whole other meme. Yeah. Sticking with baseball, just for the moment, something I noticed this week. I think we missed it at the start of the season. But Kenny Rosenberg, the Los Angeles Angels prospect, has been called up to the majors. Kenny Rosenberg, I think we could fit in the category of obviously Jewish. He's definitely Jewish. His name sounds like somebody who my dad would have gone to camp with. But right. He's up in the majors. He's not doing too straight, but we have one more Jewish pitcher in the major leagues, Kenny Rosenberg.
That's great. I just wanted to tie one more thing onto the Pederson thing, which is that, if this hadn't happened, the thing that we would have been talking about was that he had one of the best games that anyone has had this season about a week and a half ago. So this was, let me just make sure I have the date correct, but he had a 3-homer game where he won the game. Sorry, he tied up the game and then essentially won it against the Mets on May 24th, and it was a game that the Giants came back and won 13-12. So, along with this beef, Pederson has just been hitting the stuffing out of the ball. He has a 6-game hit streak, including that 4-hit game going into today. So, lots to watch in that regard. Kenny Rosenberg getting called up, that's great. Always good to have more Jews in the major leagues, and I don't know if there's going to be too many more debuts this year, but
also his name is Kenny Rosenberg. How old school is that? Yeah. Like it's the name a news anchor has before they change it to like Kenny Rose. Right.
So Gabe, how was your sport fishing journey? Did you hook any big ones?
It was fabulous. I think, I caught a 250-pound marlin, which seems to be the most non-Jewish thing I think I've ever done. It was very Hemingway-esque, as you're like reeling in the giant fish and everyone's screaming, you're fighting the beast, and your animal brain takes over that I'm gonna conquer this animal, and then you black out, and then you have the fish, and it was really amazing. I caught 2 marlin, one of them, or 2 billfish, I should say. One of them was a blue marlin, another one was a sailfish. I caught a bunch of tuna, a couple of snapper. Oh, it was a true blast. The people I went on the trip with were Jewish. I took some time to look into some of the history of Jewish sport fishing. In sort of our modern day, we don't talk about fishing a lot on this show, but in our modern day bass and snapper and tuna competitions, there really isn't a lot of modern Jews.
Okay.
However, if you look at the history of sport fishing, if you go back to the history of sport fishing, or at least all fishing, there is a lot of Jewish history. All the way back to St. Peter, who was probably the first Jewish fisherman, when he was Shimon before Jesus saved him. But moving on to a more
not sure if that counts as sport fishing, but okay.
So I'd like to read to you some of the names of the best sport fishermen in the world. They're virtually all of them are from the states of Tennessee and Florida on the bassfan.com world rankings. The top 3 have stayed the same. We've got David Young of Kentucky, Jay Yellis of Oregon, Peter Yanni of Maryland. So Mike Worm, not a lot of Jews in sort of your current. Oh, a guy named Boo Woods of.
There's a great sport fisher whose last name is Worm.
Worm, yeah, Mike Worm. That's very, very good. Amazing. So there aren't a lot of Jews. There are some really good Southern names here. Barton Wines is the 300th ranked in the world. Kevin Van Dam is the number 1 ranked guy in the world. So a lot of really great old school names. Not a lot of Jewish guys. However, if you look at the history of sport fishing, it goes back in sort of the ranked and common. The common ranking now of the size of your rod, the size of your tackle relative to the size of the fish. That whole system of scoring was created by a guy from Philadelphia named Michael Lerner in the early 21st century. Michael Lerner was a Jewish guy from Philadelphia. He has the same name as an actor named Michael Lerner, who you might remember as playing like a nerdy Jew in a whole bunch of things. But no, this Michael Lerner...
he was in Michael Lerner. He's in Total Recall, isn't he?
Yes, he's in a lot of movies like that. I don't think he was in Total Recall specifically. He played Arnold Rothstein in 8 Men Out.
Okay, yes. I'm confusing with somebody else. You're right.
And he was nominated for an Oscar for Barton Fink playing Jack Lipnick. Michael Lerner, the actor, his characters that he plays are things like Philip Kleinman and Solomon Schultz and Harvey Wiener and Cy Rosenthal.
Right, the angler.
The angler invented the modern scoring system for sport fishing. So that's about between St. Peter and Michael Lerner is really the only Jewish anglers I could find the history of. But now I'm proud to call myself one of the Jewish sport fishermen.
Interesting. Well, if anyone has any interesting sport fishing stories that incorporate Judaism in any way, feel free to let us know. Always on the lookout for Jewish interest stories in the more fringy
sports we don't cover very often
from our perspective. Yeah. Gabe, before we get to our interview with Howard, any other news you want to cover? Anything else we want to talk about?
It was a tough week for our Jewish F1 driver Lance Stroll, eliminated early in qualifying, did not do so well in the Monaco race. We mentioned Kenny Rosenberg getting called up. Also, something to mention, we are now into the semifinals of the NHL playoffs. There are 2 Jews left in the NHL playoffs right now, Zach Hyman with the Edmonton Oilers and Adam Fox with the New York Rangers, both of whom are contributing very greatly to their team's success. As we record this now, the Oilers
Hyman is
down in Game 1.
Yeah, so Hyman is tied for third in goals, I saw. Fox is tied for third in assists, which is pretty impressive. Both of them really contributing. I think Fox had a goal in the deciding game in the conference semifinals. So,
and Hyman has a goal tonight already. Hyman's got a goal tonight in Game 1 of the conference finals as we're recording this. So good for him. Friend of the pod, former Menschwarmers guest Zach Hyman is carrying his team.
Yeah. So we'll have to see how they do, and hopefully they will both make it to the Stanley Cup Finals. They're in different conferences, so either or both of them may. I'm not sure the last time that there's been a Stanley Cup winner who is Jewish, but that's something we can look into if those guys make it and have the potential to be the next one. So good luck to both of them, and we'll keep an eye on the conference semifinals.
So let's get to our interview with Howard Megdal, author of the Baseball Talmud, amongst many other things, both new and historical. But before we do, we want to talk to you all about the CJN Circle. Not only do you know that the CJN Circle grants you access to wonderful print editions of the magazine featuring yours truly and my co-host Jamie in black and white, but also includes access to special events like this one. If you are one of the next 2 subscribers from this podcast to join the CJN Circle, you'll get free tickets to the Toronto Jewish Film Festival's world premiere screening of The Rhapsody. What is The Rhapsody, Jamie?
The Rhapsody is a documentary about late composer Leo Spellman, who was, I should point out, a cousin of the similarly named Władysław Szpilman, who the pianist is based after. And Leo Spellman is a Polish-Canadian Holocaust survivor who's now passed away. And the documentary traces out his journey towards artistic liberation. It's premiering at the Toronto Jewish Film Festival. You can read more about it at tjff.com/film/the-Rhapsody, or presumably if you just Google The Rhapsody in Toronto Jewish Film Festival. But please subscribe to the CJN Circle, and if you do, you'll have a chance to win tickets to go see The Rhapsody. Let's go now to our interview with Howard Megdal. We're joined today by Howard Megdal, the author of the Baseball Talmud, the definitive position-by-position ranking of baseball's chosen players, updated edition. Congratulations, Howard, on the re-release of your book, and thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. It's been such a fun pleasure to be doing these events and being able to talk about all the things I found.
So we'll dive into the book in a moment. Before we do you want to just take an opportunity to introduce yourself a little bit to our guests?
Sure. So I am the founder and editor of The Next Women's Basketball Newsroom, a 24/7 women's basketball newsroom you can access at thenexthoops.com, and The Nine, which is a women's sports newsletter across 6 different sports, which you can get to at the THEIX sports.com. And follow me on Twitter at Howard Megdal, where I write about baseball for Baseball Prospectus and 538, and numerous other outlets covering women's sports as well.
Right. The nine we should say is the IX9, the title 9,
That's
the
right.
9. That 9.
That's exactly right.
So Howard, I wanted to talk to you about the book that's been re-released now. It is, not just a breakdown of, Jews in baseball and different Jewish baseball players, but a pretty definitive ranking of all the players among the different positions, including starting pitchers broken down by starting pitching and relief pitchers broken down by handedness. What inspired you to write this book in the first place?
When I was in college, I had a sociology professor who was the center fielder on my intramural softball team.
Okay.
And one night we went out for batting practice. My third baseman was a sabermetrics nerd like myself. And we began a spirited argument over whether Koufax or Greenberg was the best baseball player. And talk about in the book, you can make strong arguments for either. But my sociology professor, who was a child of Los Angeles in the 1960s, was so enthusiastic about it and ultimately so outraged that we weren't blindly agreeing that he jumped out of the car and quit the team over it. And yeah,
I think the argument, the Koufax Greenberg argument, is one that has been held by lots of Jewish sports fans, like for the last 50 years, basically.
It's fascinating, and so ultimately the end of that story is that I thought, this is something that I'm fascinated by and interested in, but clearly a lot of people are very passionate about it. But
right.
The Greenberg versus Koufax argument is obviously such a significant one because they're so different. Greenberg being a hitter in the 1930s. A hitter's era, but still an OPS plus 12th all time among all hitters ever. I mean,
right.
That level of player. Koufax is a pitcher pitching in the most pitcher-friendly era in baseball history, but still putting up numbers that are unlike any we've ever seen other than perhaps Pedro Martinez in the 1990s. And so finding even the gaps in their careers, Greenberg serving 4 years helping to fight the Nazis, Koufax ending his career at 31 with what would now be something that could have been corrected with routine surgery.
Sure.
None of these career arcs are standard or easy enough to be able to put against one another, and their wins above replacement, which is a great catch-all stat, are virtually identical.
It's tricky, especially for those two guys, as you say, with the gap in Greenberg's resume. I mean, his counting stats are pretty good, but not like all-time level, but very similar for guys we see who played in the 40s, where it's like they would have had 480 home runs if not for their military service, but he ends up at 330 or instead. Do you have a decision in the end about who you think's the number one, Koufax or Greenberg?
I do, and I think reasonable people, my sociology professor notwithstanding, disagree. I think you have to give the edge to Greenberg ever so slightly. I think they're very close, and I think ultimately, if this were a Bill James historical baseball abstract, you might be able to go either way. But Hank Greenberg literally fought the Nazis, and I think if you are doing a Jewish baseball book, I think you need to give extra credit to a person who did that. So Greenberg gets the edge for me.
The edge sort of on a historical and tangible, not necessarily something on the field, but on the field level, I guess.
Had World War II gone differently, there may not be a Koufax. I just don't think you can do that. In the same way that Harry Dannon is my catcher ever so slightly over Mike Lieberthal. Harry Dannon, who fought bravely in World War II as well. I think there needs to be extra credit given to Nazi fighters.
That's very much like the Jimmy Stewart, John Wayne debate as well.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very good point. That's exactly right. Although Jimmy Stewart has it all over John Wayne, but that's
the Nazi thing is just icing on the cake. John Wayne sucks, and Jimmy Stewart's great, and the fighting Nazis is just really the tip of the iceberg there.
100% agree.
So Howard, you recently re-released the book. It came out just this past month. What prompted the wanting to refresh it and update the list for 2022?
Well, it's interesting. There's a few different ways in which the book, it's about 60% bigger, but it's about 80% new material, and it changed in some fundamental ways. And so there's a few. One is statistically, and this is significant. Statistically, you are looking at a world of movement forward when it comes to thinking about how we understand advanced metrics, and being able to compare between eras is very significant in and of itself. There's also a host of new players who have come into the league, and players who are at the beginning of their careers who have completed their careers, and being able to have further context for them as well. But the biggest thing for me is how many different people I was able to tell the stories about, not just as players, but as people. The amount of things that have been digitized that have allowed for research to fully flesh out what were players who were a few lines in the baseball encyclopedia the last time around is almost unbelievable to me in the ways I was able to find out details about people's lives. And that was the biggest pleasure of all for me out of these, where these are all just little anecdotes writ large, making up the fabric of Jewish baseball history.
Right. So it sounds like it benefited both from, sabermetrics and also just from like the Saber bio projects, like the baseball research that they've been responsible for and other organizations as well.
Newspapers.com is this incredible compendium when you know who to look for and where they are of people's lives.
Right.
There's this false belief that people have that things are getting shared on Facebook that we never knew about from past generations. This stuff was in newspapers. You go to local papers, you can find detailed accounts of an 8-year-old's birthday party, who attended, what was served for cake. I mean, all this stuff was always something that we shared with one another.
Right. And so then among the second reason, including more recent athletes as well, I just wanted to highlight a few of them. I see Alex Bregman has made it to number one.
He's your number one third baseman.
That's right.
And we should say former Blue Jay great Danny Valencia, number 3 all time third baseman, also a new addition since the last book. In terms of the future, if you're gonna update this again in 10 years, who do you think is most likely to make a further jump up the list, or who do you see being further up there?
If you look at, and I enlisted the help of people like Dan Zimborski, who does really good work on projection systems for fan drafts. If you look at what the average outcome of Bregman's career would be, we were talking about 4, right?
Sure.
55 is about the magic number when it comes to Greenberg, Koufax, Ian Kinsler, by the way, my best second baseman of all and somebody who's really underrated. Bregman right now projects to finish right around 55. Well, that's his average projection. Alex Bregman might exceed that, and by a fairly significant margin. And if he does, we need to have a reworking of the overall list. Right. And who is top the list? Bregman has an opportunity to be there. But there are players right now who have a chance to move up the list. Max Fried has the opportunity, if he continues what he has done to date, to be a legitimate second best pitcher in Jewish baseball history, ahead of even the great Ken Holtzman, ahead of people like Barney the Yiddish Curver Pelty. An opportunity to really make his mark as the player of this era. And then, look, somebody like Garrett Stubbs is not really talked about. Garrett Stubbs is part of one of my favorite trivia questions, which is the 2021 World Series had 4 Jews in it. Who are the 4? Everyone knows Joc Pederson, Alex Bregman, Max Fried, who of course was the winning pitcher in the most recent World Series game. Garrett Stubbs is 4th. Well, now he's in Philadelphia. He's having a fantastic season. JT Realmuto is past 30. Is there an opportunity for Garrett Stubbs to become the catcher of the future in Philly? Well, you can make an argument. If he keeps playing the way he did on Sunday when he hit a long home run against the New York Mets, we may well see it. So there are going to be people who surprise us. Rowdy Tellez has an opportunity to push Ron Blomberg among first base DHs of all time. There's just a huge crop of players, and that's before we even get to my top 18 prospects. Guys like Zach Geloff down in the Oakland Athletics organization who might help them sooner than later because they keep trading everybody else.
Right, I like that section a lot. The 18 top Jewish prospects of the future. I mean, I think there's been a lot of focus on the Orthodox guys who got picked last year, Jacob Steinmetz and Ellie Klugman, but Hunter Bishop is like a real deal prospect. What's his name? Sorry, Josh Wolf is a guy who I think we've had an eye on for a long time. Who we should probably see in the big leagues soon. Yeah, we just need Hunter Bishop to stay healthy because he's got the tools to play. We saw him in the Arizona Fall League. We saw him hit a home run in the Arizona Fall League. It's just really a question of getting healthy.
As Blue Jays fans, we're wondering where Spencer Horwitz is on your top 18.
He's there, and he's somebody who I think very highly of. If he continues to hit at Double and Triple A, he's got an opportunity to help that team. Now that Blue Jays team is stacked, so it's fascinating. That's going to be a hard lineup to get into, but far from impossible. And he's certainly somebody who I like a lot.
We should say, just for our local sports fan, that there is a fair amount of Blue Jays content in here. I won't give it away, but if you buy the book, you might be interested in seeing who the number one all-time Jewish right fielder is. I think intrepid Blue Jays fans might be able to figure that one out.
It's very true. And again, Spencer's 244, 352, 407 is his slash line right now at Double-A. So he is more than holding his own in his first time, extended time at that level. And this is somebody, who had put up solid batting averages and above average on base percentage. He controls the strike zone really well. It's going to be fascinating to see what he does the rest of the way.
It is. We always say when we talk about like the draft and who, what Jews were selected in the draft, that it's like, here's everyone who is picked. It's exciting. You may not hear this guy's name for another 6 years because he's going to take some time getting through the minors or go to college or something like that. It's so tricky with baseball. I'm so impressed by the writers who are prospect focused, who can just have like 1,500 guys' names in their heads at any given time. When you think of top 50 lists for all 30 teams, it's unbelievable to me.
I love being able to do that work over at Baseball Prospectus. I do it on the fantasy side, and just the guys who are able to handle. We've got this top 500 dynasty list, and it's not just random changes. It's based very specifically on what these players are doing or not doing. It's fascinating. I totally agree.
So I want to get into your sort of interest a little bit. You have the Baseball Talmud. Clearly, your career is focused around baseball, Jews in baseball. Are there any other sports that you follow Jewish athletes in? If
there's a sport, I follow Jewish athletes in it. I mean, obviously, as a women's basketball writer, Bird has been a standard setter.
Of course.
In fundamental ways. But something I love is, there's somebody, she came from Syosset, New York. Well, Lila Grubman played at Syosset High School as a point guard, is on her way to Yale, and 20 years after Sue, we have history repeating itself with Lila Grubman doing much the same thing. But, being able to follow it across these sports is something we're always keeping a close eye on, to be sure. But yes, I think specifically.
I see behind you, I understand this is an auditory medium, but for the listeners, Howard has got some soccer scarves on the wall behind him. And we've talked, I guess, a lot about Jews in soccer and sort of the history of at least in North America now, Jews in soccer. And there's a number of almost Jews on Team USA right now. Walker Zimmerman is someone we get asked all the time if he's Jewish. He's quite the opposite, from what I understand.
I see.
DeAndre Yedlin did play for Team USA for a while. I don't know if he's still on the roster. There are currently no Jews. There are some Jews on Team Canada. There's sort of a debate over whether or not Tajon Buchanan has Jewish ancestry, and we're sort of working on figuring that out.
Would be a good get for us.
Yeah. It would be a very good get for us as a people. Absolutely. Absolutely, and I think it's we've had some players play in Israel, but so suffice it to say you're always following. Will we ever see a soccer Talmud or a basketball Talmud?
I never say never about any of it, but I will tell you, looking up close, Ryan Terrell on the basketball side, on the men's basketball side, is somebody I'm obviously keeping very close eye on, who played at Yeshiva and who I am told has a real opportunity to be drafted. And so that would be just a remarkable thing, both as a Division III graduate myself.
Did you play any sport?
I broadcast.
Oh, you broadcast. Yeah, there you go. The Jewish athlete.
And I played intramural at that level.
Yes.
So that was the level I reached. But
and where did you go to school?
I went to Bard College.
College.
Proud Bard alum. And we played yeshiva when I was in school there, but not, unfortunately, during the Ryan Terrell era. And it's be fascinating to see. But yes, I'm all for seeing Division III athletes make good.
Yeah, just another few
weeks.
There's
actually a Torontonian who is going, I think is signed with Yeshiva for next season. Jamie would know the info better than me, but there is a player from Toronto who is going to Yeshiva. Jamie, do you remember his name?
I just saw it the other day because he signed there, but I can't remember off the top of my head. But it is interesting to see. It is interesting to see Yeshiva sort of come on as a basketball powerhouse. Yes. Within the Skyline Conference at least, or within Division III basketball.
I was going to say not even within the Skyline, and that was a winnable game for Bard. When I was in school, 20 years ago. But
right.
The point being that they have grown it very significantly. And, even having as an assistant coach somebody like Mike Sweetney, who I had a chance to cover early in my career when he played for the New York Knicks. And now he's an assistant coach at Yeshiva. So it's delightful to see. And if you ever have the opportunity to come down to the city in order to see a Yeshiva game, you're packed in there. It's, just a wonderful experience to be part of.
You might run into Amare.
That's also very true. I was privileged to be able to cover during my time covering the Knicks as well.
Well, it is interesting to see, Yeshiva be this sort of magnet for Jewish players. I mean, obviously it's made up of Jewish players, but, Ryan Terrell is a guy who had offers other places and decided to go there because he wanted to, represent, represent in a real way. And I would say the other main example that we've seen of that is the Team Israel baseball team. That's had so much success in the last few years, going to the Olympics, going to the World Baseball Classic. And, it's very interesting to see these Jewish comprised teams get put together and the Jews all play together as one team, like on Team Israel.
Fantasy for people like us. You thought, oh my God, how great would it be if you could put all these Jewish baseball players together and see how they play as a team? And it's like, boom, Team Israel. See Sean Green play on the same team as Brad Ausmus. I did see Ian Kinsler playing on the same team as Dean Kramer. Like, it's mind blowing, but it's a dream come true.
Well, I bring that up because I know at the end of the book you do put together your all-time Jewish team, which you refer to as unbeatable. And just to run down the starting lineup, Harry Danning.
Well, I don't just refer to it as unbeatable. I just think it's important to point out. I statistically demonstrate that it is unbeatable. I enlist the help of a statistician in order to prove it to be so.
Right. So that's what I wanted to talk about. How good would that team be if it were in the MLB today?
They would win 130 games. They would set records the kind that the Chicago Cubs did during the Tinker to Evers to Chance era. They would blow away the Los Angeles Dodgers. It would not be a close fight.
Right. I think that's a great place to end on. This amazing. If you take it all together, you could really put this amazing team together. Jewish contribution to baseball has gone back more than 130 years now, going back to Lippman Pike, I think so.
Even prior to that, Nate Birkenstock. People would credit George Wright as being the oldest professional baseball player in American history, but he was born in 1835. I mean, he's a youngster by comparison to Nate Birkenstock, who was born way back in 1832. And so when people ask the question, how far back does Jewish baseball history go? The answer is always. When there has been professional baseball, there have been Jews in the game.
That's great. Well, thanks so much for joining us, Howard. It's been a treat having you on, and we'll do this again as soon as you publish the third edition of the Baseball Talmud.
Or when
we'd love to have you.
Talmud comes out.
Or anytime you want, to be honest.
That's terrific to me. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
Well, thanks again to Howard for joining us. I'm sure we'll have links in the show page. You can find the Baseball Talmud presumably anywhere that you buy books, or at least Amazon.
Or Talmuds. I would hope you would also be able to find it at fine Judaica stores.
Yeah, I would hope this makes it to at least some Judaica stores. I think it's like there's got to be a shelf of somewhat
like
non-religious secular material for gifts. Yeah, so yeah, if you have a bar mitzvah boy coming up and you want to add something to a gift, please get the Baseball Talmud. I would say give something a little bit more to the bar mitzvah boys in your life than only the book. But
the Talmud is a wonderful
included
gift.
as part of the gift. Yeah, and there's a lot of Jewish players in there. So if you want to do a Daf Yomi where every day you read about one different Jewish player, there's been a few hundred in the history of Major League Baseball. You can get through most of the year just following along with the Baseball Talmud. aside from that, Gabe, I would ask our listeners, if you're listening to us through the website, please try to like and subscribe to our podcast wherever you get your podcasts, any sort of podcast app. You can find us.
All of
on
it helps.
Canadian Jewish
Please
News,
tell
as
your
always.
friends about the show. I'm sorry to interrupt you, James, but please tell your friends about the show. Like and subscribe anywhere you can, iTunes, Spotify, what have you. It really helps us out a lot. And we love bringing the show to you. In case anyone's wondering, next weekend we'll be at the Canadian Open, the PGA Tour event, just sort of working the beat, chasing down some Jewish athletes. So if you run into us, please say hi. We're excited to be there and looking forward to any sort of future Menschwarmers content we can bring you guys.
Yeah, you can also follow us on Twitter. On Twitter, it's at Menschwarmers. Until next time.